What's up, Shining Lights? This is Chief Editor in here, and
this is Cloud9.
And today we got, for me, a personal fan favorite, and mangaka Brion Foulke of who does
Flipside Comics.
Flipside. Yep. Yes, thank you for having me on.
No, thank you. Yeah, thank you for coming on. Like I said, I'm gonna have to hold back the fan side of me for the duration of this, and there's a lot I want to.
You don't have to hold it back too much.
I appreciate it.
No, we see you around, honestly, like all around the convention circuit, and like we go to YomaCon a lot. So seeing, like how far you've made it with your Flipside book, like seeing the characters, seeing how fleshed out everything is, it's. I really appreciate you coming on today.
No problem. I wasn't busy anyway, so it's all right. Yeah.
And you from what you told us,
I'm not going out a whole lot lately,
Oh, of course.
Yeah. I mean. Well, yeah. I'm like, I guess in a good way and a bad way. I mean, I know everybody has their own like perspectives on the whole thing. We already know what we're
good. I guess it's good for your show.
Yeah.
Well, people have free time.
Oh yeah,
it's good for internet shows.
Yeah, definitely, I can agree with that. There,
it's a good thing you don't do your show on location.
I'm curious how you're holding up during all this. But before we even get into that, I mean, tell people about yourself and kind of about what you do.
Sure. Well, I'm the writer and artist of Flipside, the webcomic / web manga. I pretty much created it myself. And I've been working on it for a really long time. Yep, that's it.
Oh, yeah.
I started it in 1999. That's when I first started putting it on.
1999.
Mm-hmm. And I worked on it until 2004, and then I rebooted it. But the old material is all still up online as well. So there's material spanning since 1999 on the website.
Huh.
Working on it all that time. It's crazy.
I know. I'm actually surprised. Yeah. Like when I look at a lot of the the way that like everything is as far as how long you've made it far along. I didn't know that it had been going on, since 1999. But I mean that's truly an accomplishment to keep up a webcomic, for that long, to be able to draw on the audience and all that. I mean, definitely.
Yeah, it's a pretty long time if you think about it.
Yeah, I didn't even know the series was rebooted at any point.
Yeah, well, it was sort of soft rebooted. Like it wasn't like I mean, I use it was more like I created a re-entry point because like the early stuff is really rough. So as with a lot of people, like a lot of people will actually like reboot at a certain point. They'll just start over. They'll want to start over. That's an urge that like a lot of people in comics have because you get better as you practice.
Yeah.
And people look back on their old stuff and they think, oh, that's terrible. We all have that. But what I decided to do was I felt like I didn't want to scrap everything I was doing. So I just simply created like a re-entry point. I don't know what like you would officially call it or just how you would describe it. Maybe soft reboot. Even that's not quite right because it's like it's all in universe. Like all the old stuff is still canon, and you can go back and read it, and it's still relevant because characters that were introduced there are still like part of the comic. But if you go to the website and you start reading from like chapter 1, that would be the new stuff. The old stuff I retitled to Book 0. That's why I differentiated it.
Okay.
That's my method of doing it. Like a lot of people have to kind of grapple with that, like that thing of, the early work is so rough. What do you do? Do you just like, do you go back and redo it or you just leave it? You just leave it and just hope that people won't mind.
Okay. No, yeah. So what made you decide to reboot it or soft reboot it in a sense?
Yeah, or whatever word you want to use. Well, I mean, like I said, it's just like that's something that it seems like all long-running comics have to deal with that issue, right? Like, what do you do? Like, if we're talking about like professional comics and professional manga, like for example, like I don't know, you guys probably follow like Berserk, right? You know Berserk.
Yeah.
To compare the early,
I should be following Berserk, but
yeah, I mean, you just know, like, if you compare like the early stuff in Berserk to like the modern stuff, there's a huge difference in like the art quality, and even in professional manga, they have to deal with that. But you know, usually they don't have the luxury of going back to redo old stuff, so they just kind of just leave it, and you know, people just deal with it. But with web comics, it's a little bit different because like most of the people doing web manga are amateurs, so the early stuff in some cases can be really super rough. You know, they didn't start as professionals.
So when you first started, I guess doing a webcomic, like in all this time that you've done it, like since like 1999, like how do you feel as though like the landscape of webcomics have really developed?
Yeah, this is a good question. I mean, it's definitely changed a lot, and I'm probably a bit more distanced from it than like some people because I just pretty much sit in my cave and just do my own thing, and I'm not, you know, for whatever reason, but but I mean, there's definitely like a time when there was like, I mean, I think most you could ask most webcomics people, and I think they would tell you the same thing. There was sort of like a bubble at some point, I guess somewhere in the mid 2000s. There was definitely a webcomic bubble, and at a certain point, it like burst, right? I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about.
Well, no, I know that there was a burst, like around like 2009 in terms of like comics, but was that something that happened? Did that also affect webcomics? Because I mean, I thought that was more of when digital comics kind of became more of a, you know.
Well, it felt like it did. I mean, there's always, I mean, even there's still continue to be webcomics, of course, and like now, like the landscape is different now because they've got these collectives now, like Webtoons.
Yeah,
like that's the most popular one. And everything's sort of focused into that, and there's a lot more. There's a lot more of these like web. Actually, I guess it's really more kind of driven by what's popular for mobile now, because everything is all very like formatted for mobile with stuff that like scrolls down.
Yeah,
stuff that's designed to be viewed on mobile. So like that seems like the biggest change. No, I mean, I think, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was more of like a convention thing because there was a time when, at least at conventions, webcomics were like a really big deal. Like they'd have like their own sections and it'd be full of webcomic artists. And now it's like almost extinct now, you know. Webcomics aren't barely a presence at conventions anymore. And like so some of the big webcomic stars of the old have just kind of gone away for the most part. Like there's still some of the old people are still doing stuff. Like I think Mega Tokyo is still around.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, Mega Tokyo. You know about Fred Gallagher.
Yeah, I think he's still doing stuff.
Yeah, no, I'm sure he is too. You know, from what I see, you know, post on Twitter.
So there's been some changes, I guess.
So like when you look at like the I guess the web, like how like you have webtoons for now, right? Like kind of out there, for example, and of course they're like getting, you know, a lot of these works like animated now. You know, how do you feel about that? Like when you take a look at, for example, like you know, like more on the indie scene, like do you feel as though there is now opportunity for possibly, like for example, Flipside getting animated at some point? You know, for a lot of the readers out there that are, you know, interested in it.
I mean, maybe, probably not. It would be difficult for Flipside because, I mean, for a few reasons. Like, it's more, the main reason probably be like the more adult content of it makes it a lot more difficult to get animated. And then also being like a much more traditionally manga styled comic, you know, it would seem much more appropriate for like a more anime styled thing. But you can't really like, that's difficult to do in, you know, without going to like Japan, you know, so. And I don't have connections to like, I mean, if, you know, if like one of the big anime studios came up to me and somehow expressed interest in animating, that'd be great. But I think the language barrier makes that very difficult. So I don't know. There's others. I think the ones that are more like cartoon oriented probably have more of an opening there. But I don't know. Like what webcomics have like jumped into animation lately?
So
I haven't really been following that.
So there's actually been ones like with the God of High School, which is like a manga. So a lot of manga have actually kind of come more to the forefront in more recent days, you know, which is kind of what makes me think like, you know, webcomics, you know, across the web, are we going to see a lot more of this?
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, we might. I probably will. Like as that stuff gets more popular, then it makes sense that more of it's going to be animated. But you know, like that stuff is like produced. That's more in the Asian world. They don't quite have the same language barrier thing that like something that I have. But my comic is pretty unique, I guess, because it's very traditionally manga, but it's made by someone who's like, you know, in the West. That's pretty rare, I guess. You know.
No, but there's a lot of care that I can honestly, when you look at like a lot of the panels, you know, when you look at how, you know, you put care into even your backgrounds, you know, you can tell that, you know, like you actually, you know, have an understanding of the medium, you know, like when you look at everything, there's actually an understanding of the medium as opposed to just, you know, someone, and I'm not trying to shame anybody, you know, out there who's working on their own, you know, their own craft, but, you know, I can tell that you took your time with it, you know, and I think that's really important.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, I mean, it's just more that, you know, I've always just been very interested in manga, you know, like I'm a fan of manga and have been for a long time. So that's just the type of stuff that I've been interested in doing. And I've also been, since I've been doing it for a long time, like I started doing it at a time when I was just, it seemed more appealing to go like a more traditional route, you know, like, I mean, there's plenty of like manga styled comics online now, but usually they tend to like, especially if they're like made by younger people, they're probably going to tend to follow a more webtoons type route because that's probably the stuff that they got exposed to first, right? So that's why there's like that's why I think like if you look at the popularity of webtoons, you know, there's a lot more like modern styled kind of manhwa, or I guess that's what you call the like more kind of like mobile friendly, vertically aligned comics, right? Like that's right. What I'm talking about, right? Stuff like that. That's not really like, it's not meant to be for like print. Like it's not designed for print. It's designed for web. Whereas like my stuff, like being more traditional. Like what I mean by that, besides the fact that it's like it's going for like a manga arts, like just like a shonen manga arts sort of style. It's also like it's copying stuff that's designed for print, or that's the style of going for like print comics, which, you know, and then, you know, I try to capitalize that by making actual books.
Fair enough. And I mean, it's the web comics or the webtoon stuff, they do come off more episodic, like, you know, when you scroll down through them, and it even feels like, you know, I'm darn near reading a script or watching an anime in a sense.
I mean, that stuff, like it's, you know, it can still translate to like being made into an anime very easily, but I'm not sure how that works with taking that stuff and translating it to like print versions. I feel like they usually would just skip that step because it's not really formatted for print. But I don't actually know if there are some of those things have print versions, because I don't follow that super closely. I don't know if you know.
Actually, no, enlighten me.
Well, I don't either. No, but I'm assuming that they don't, because like I said, it's like that style of comic just wouldn't.
I don't believe so. You know, like I don't think that they really have them out there for print.
It's not really formatted for print. Like you can tell the difference between something that was like designed for print rather than designed for mobile. It's like it's just a different style of doing comics.
Yeah, which is interesting.
I know.
You know, it's kind of like you see the medium evolving. You know, in a way. You know.
Yeah, and it's definitely evolving in that direction. And I mean, that's nothing. There's nothing really wrong with that. It's just very different from like this my style and like going from more the traditional print route, because that's like that's what I grew up with basically, and it's what I tend to still read.
Yeah. So speaking of that, tell us more about the Flipside story. Because I find the core characters Maytag, Bernadette, and Crest very interesting and diverse characters. Even.
Thank you.
And I noticed like in the about section, and this probably has more so to do with it prior to the reboot or something, but I noticed more so Maytag and Bernadette are introduced as the main characters on that, whereas when I jump into the story, at least where I came in at volume 1 or chapter 1, Crest is implied as the main character to me, and that's how we kind of got our trifecta, at least from my perception coming in here.
Well, yeah, probably the way that I chose to do it created some false impressions in people. So I don't know if it was ideal or not, but like the thinking was that because that was sort of like that was the reboot point there. When I first started the comic, it was just Maytag and Bernadette, and then at the point when I wanted to like start the story over, I decided. Actually, I had the idea for like the Crest character for a while as like a sort of a male character that would tag along with them. So I was always planning to do something with that, but I thought it might be neat to use him as a way to reintroduce the main characters, to re-jump into the story from a different angle. Mm-hmm. So like the idea there is just that like he's just like an ordinary kid, and then he gets caught up in their adventures, right? So like the first two chapters are called like Two Women. So like, I think it's still like, essentially like it's sort of straightforward in a way that like it is still like a story about those two characters. Like they're still the main characters, but you get introduced to them like to that whole structure of the comic in kind of a backdoor way. I kind of did that on purpose.
Yeah, I've
always been a little bit tricky that way.
So just for the audience, for those out there who are watching, can you quickly summarize what the story of Flipside encompasses, like a summary of the story? For those who may not be familiar.
Sure, it's a little bit difficult to summarize because it's essentially like a long-term kind of adventure comic with like it's about characters who go on like a series of adventures, and
definitely like a long adventure,
and it tends to go like do it like there's like I use the premise to essentially like do like all kinds of different stories in a way, like stuff that's like more horror themed, and then more adventure, more fantasy stuff. I kind of just do whatever I feel like. But the overall like premise of the story is just it's about these two characters and their adventures. But thematically, it's like there's a big focus on the relationship between the two main characters, and there's like a lot of focus on relationship issues between like two different people or entities or beings or whatever, and like whenever there's two major sides to a story, or like two different people in the relationship who are just different from each other, but equally both valid in their own way, what happens when they how do they work that out? That's essentially like the major theming behind the comic. It's sort of like what the title of Flipside really means, like side, one side and flip side, right? Yeah. So it's just like I usually describe it as like a relationship, or like a fantasy comic about like relationships.
No,
That makes sense.
But it's also essentially just like whatever I like feel like doing. It's just like it's also like a hodgepodge of just all the different things that I like horror type stories, David Lynchian surrealist stuff, romantic stuff.
Oh yeah, I definitely get those vibes. I'm not gonna say too much for the audience out there that decides to check it out, but especially when hints of Bloody Mary and things with the Thin Man come into play, and I definitely get the vibes of some of those other horror stories coming in there, and I like how you meld them together.
Thanks. And of course, also like shonen manga, like action type stuff, and healthy amount of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure homages.
Oh my goodness, JoJo, that's right up this dude's alley.
Yes.
I'm like JoJo. JoJo's cool, but I respect Araki more than I like JoJo. I'll put it that way. Araki, I think, is fantastic at what he does, but definitely I can say that.
Well, Araki is JoJo.
He
is JoJo.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that you noticed some of these obvious allusions to this some JoJo in there.
I did here or there.
I've been a fan since long before the new anime started and got all popular again. I was on the JoJo train for a long time.
Now, funny enough, I checked out your series before I ever got introduced to JoJo. So, it was interesting when I did watch JoJo. I did look back like, wait a minute, I do remember a few things.
It didn't really begin its new renaissance, like JoJo, that is, this new renaissance in America until the new anime came out, which is when was that, early 2010s or something?
Yeah,
it wasn't even that long ago.
I did look at the first season. No one can say anything about that.
Okay.
I did try it. But one thing that no one can deny is that JoJo was very creative, which is why I say I respected Araki. For sure.
Very creative. It is. We could do a whole podcast on JoJo.
Really
so perhaps you've already done that before. I don't know.
Oh, I know this dude would probably love to do that. Talk about JoJo.
So, as you brought light to before, the story is told in pretty much from the viewpoint of Cress, in a sense. I actually did get a feeling that that Maytag and Bernadette were the main characters, and Cress was basically there as a spectator. I did get interested whenever it was touched on Cress, but for the majority of it, they were the two main characters. And Maytag actually is a very interesting character to me. I'm kind of curious your thoughts behind her creation. Her personality is almost, I want to say, neutral in a sense, where she's not too extreme in a lot of regards, but yet she can be. And in any hostile situation, she can keep a level head or keep a level head to level the playing field in a sense, and turn it around to her favor. She even used manipulation tactics. But I'm kind of curious, what was your thought process when coming up with her personality?
Well, basically, the thought process behind her character from the sense of what her how her character is used in the story is sort of think of her as being almost like a hero, like a superhero, except I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if instead of having a superpower, her superpower is just her ability to talk to people and handle emotions and stuff. So her superpower is just her ability to deal with people. And that's essentially the concept behind her character. And then there's Bernadette, who's the actual fighter. Right. So that's the basic thing. But yeah, her in terms of her personality, she's very pansexual, super open-minded, and just very in control of what's going on, but also her otherworldliness kind of isolates her from people around her too. So I'm I want to. I guess I shouldn't. I don't want to spoil too much. I shouldn't say too much because like there's aspects that they're relevant in the current comic that are like spoilers for twists.
Fair enough.
At certain points, but
no, I get that. The and her relationship with Bernadette, obviously, there are a lot of obstacles later on, but I find it interesting how they click in a sense because you find out more about Bernadette, and her personality is almost more straightforward versus the complexities you find with Maytag.
Yeah.
What was the thought process with this opposites of attraction happening?
Well, I mean, as I said before, I kind of alluded to like that's kind of like goes back to like what the theme of the comic is, which is like taking these two opposite sort of personalities and then putting them together. And there's complicated reasons why they're together, but you know, it's not. There's challenges associated with like what makes them so different, and that's kind of what the comic is like about exploring.
Mm-hmm.
Bernadette is she's a lot more straightforward in her personality, but like there's aspects to her that resonate for Maytag and then vice versa. And so, you know, the comic explores that, and more of that is revealed as it goes on.
Now, so, go ahead.
Oh no, I just had a question. So I'm like, when I look at a lot of the pages, I'm curious, do you stick to just keeping it traditional, or have you done any of it digitally?
It's all done by hand. It's all done on boards. It's like this. It's done on boards by hand.
Okay.
Like I said,
actually, can you hold that back up again? Like maybe we can get, you know.
Yeah, sure. I'm pretty much a traditionalist when it comes to doing manga.
Hold on, I want to zoom in on that if I can.
Sure. Click on the screen.
Oh, I think this page isn't even up yet, so it's spoilers. Whoa.
Oh.
Let me see if I can get it over there.
This one is.
I think that was about the closest we could get. I don't know why it's not letting me.
At the bottom right corner or upper right corner of his screen, you should see like a small.
Oh, okay. I see solo. There we go.
Yep. Yes. A couple I happen to have sitting here.
Yeah, nice. That looks sweet.
Thanks. Yeah, this one is going to be up on Monday, so you just got a sneak preview.
I feel special.
Good.
But brownie points with myself because I personally am a fan of more the traditional style of doing this stuff.
I like traditional too. You know.
There's something cool about the you know, having it on the board like that, you know, drawing it by hand and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then there's nothing wrong with the
more analog style,
the digital style, but analog style is I just have a personal favoritism to that. That being said, going back with those characters, Bernadette and Maytag, I'm a bit curious here if their personalities, in a sense, or in their experiences, relate in any sense to experiences in your own life.
Yeah, I mean, without going into too much detail, I definitely pull aspects of like my personality and just like or ideas or just thoughts I had, and I use them for the characters. I wouldn't say that like any of them really, like not any of the characters are necessarily like based on people that I know in real life, but they're just more conglomerations of, you know, people or ideas that I've had that I just thought would make for an interesting character.
Yeah.
Okay. So as far as your process, when you're, I guess you could say, working on like, you know, a page, or do you do it just simply based on page by page, or are you like, okay, I'm gonna like write up so much of the story right here, and I'm already kind of crafted the characters, already kind of done designs over here, and now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to do maybe, this many set of pages on this particular storyline. Like, like maybe you have a particular arc in mind. I guess I'm just curious as far as what is your process when you're working on, especially doing a webcomic for since 1999. So like I say 20 plus years, what is the process behind that?
Yeah. I can't really speak for everyone, but I have a feeling that people's schedules tend to dictate their schedules. So like, since I do like updates 3 times a week, I have a tendency to just, do the pages based on that. It's like, I try to like honestly, like I try to work ahead as much as I can, but so sometimes I'll have like a few pages done ahead of time. There's usually not really more than a few pages done ahead of time. I don't really like ever sit down and just like do like a whole chapter and then just kick back, I have a feeling that not very many people work like that because it's really hard to do. Like it takes a lot of discipline to do work you don't need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And most people these days don't tend to be, it's not necessarily a lot of disciplined people, myself included. It's hard to be disciplined, especially these days. So, I tend to do the pages like relatively.
You have to say you're just to a degree. You have to be disciplined to be doing a webcomic, especially to be putting it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, to a certain extent, you have to have a certain kind of discipline to be able to maintain like a schedule. That's true. I mean, it's not easy even just to do like a couple pages a week. But I mean, and a lot of people have trouble with it. I mean, a lot of people don't necessarily even have set schedules. And, there's a lot of, I can't really speak to what other people are doing too much because there's so many comics out there that I don't know, but it's difficult. It's definitely very difficult. But I sort of am able, like, just for myself, I've been able to like establish a kind of rut to put myself in where I just get used to doing it all the time, working on the next page at a certain time or whatever. And just been able to follow that. And you also like, it helps, I think for me that I'm the writer and the artist because although, I mean, if I was just the writer, it'd be fine too, I guess. But like, it helps that like, I usually tend to just write stories that I find interesting. And usually I'm interested in whatever I'm writing. And then if I'm not, I just kind of steer it in the direction of something that I'd be more interested in. Right. So that's really key to like keeping your enthusiasm up. If you don't keep your enthusiasm up, then you're just going to burn out.
Oh yeah, I can believe that. I'm sure that that happens to people quite a bit actually, or they have like a breakdown or get, over, too much stress, they're not having fun anymore.
Yeah. It's really easy to I think this happens to a lot of people, especially like more amateurs, where you get this idea for like this epic story. Like I'm going to tell this epic story is going to be like 1 million volumes, like One Piece. And then you start doing it. And then, then you don't realize how much work it is until you're actually like in the middle of it. And then you're like, oh, I'm not going to finish this. You just don't. Right. People tend to bite off more than they can chew because they always want to do these like big epic things. And it's not even only comics. Like you see that with like video games too, or people, creators who are like, I'm going to make the most epic open world game possible. And then they actually like go to make it and they're like, oh, we got to cut this. We got to cut that. We got to cut that. Probably happens to movie directors. It's just it's a thing that happens to creative people, I think.
Do you ever feel like you've gotten it in that situation with, working on Flipside?
Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes kind of because like, especially like during certain arcs where like I've got 3 things going. Yeah, there was like a while in the comic where like there's like 3 different arcs happening at the same time with like each of the major characters, and that was kind of there was a lot. It required a lot of chapters to like get through stuff, and I finally got to a point where I was able to, once you reunite the characters, you can like tell smaller stories, and it becomes a lot easier. In hindsight, it was probably a mistake to even go that route, but I managed to get through it. but it's a very difficult thing to get through,
But shouldn't we challenge ourselves like as like creators, don't you think? Like as far as like, being able to push that envelope to kind of like evolve make yourself evolve. Like do you feel as though like that kind of like helped you as like a storyteller in a way? Like
you should definitely challenge. I think it's more important. I mean, it depends on your personality. In a certain sense, you have to challenge yourself, but I think that what you more want to do is challenge your ability to do something that is different, that stands out, or that is interesting, or goes different ways, which doesn't necessarily like require like a big epic story structure. I think what you want to avoid doing is putting yourself into like a slog, like, doing like these big epic storylines. And I mean, besides like the big epic storylines often aren't necessarily like artistically that challenging anyway, because they tend to like devolve into like if you read like, like the big mangas, like stuff like Bleach. I don't know if you've ever read Bleach.
Oh yeah.
But like towards the end when it's like it's like these, it sort of like mutates into like these gigantic battles where like all the characters have to be involved, and even for the audience it becomes a slog. Like every character has to have their own fight. It's like too much. The story would be more effective if like you narrowed the focus to like a couple characters. When you like let it bloat like that, it's not even really, that's not necessarily challenging for the right reasons, right? So you don't need to, you want to probably, and since we're mostly talking to people who would tend to be amateurs who like want to start their own comic, it's definitely a good idea not to bite off more than you chew. Definitely start smaller, do smaller stories that can be wrapped up, if not necessarily even wrapped up quickly, but just get to the point more quickly so you can get to whatever is interesting. Don't like put yourselves into these slogs, right? You can still do challenging stuff, but make it something that you can finish.
I'm gonna do One Piece. I'm gonna make One Piece 2.0. We're gonna be going for the next 50 years.
Okay,
we'll be at the halfway point.
Well, I mean, if that's what you want to do, more power. Good luck.
Right.
Oh my goodness. The thing is, I think a lot of people don't realize is that the people that usually usually when you have like Shonen Jump and a lot of these companies that work on these stories that are that long, it's usually not just that one creator. Usually you have a whole team behind them.
Well, right. They have whole teams. And also they're like the really big ones. They're like paid a lot of money. And they have a sort of a different paradigm because they're expected to keep like the popular stories going for years. So they have to like keep coming up with new materials. It's a little bit different for them, So there's a tendency there to like go for like the more, that's why like all the big shonen stuff has a tendency to be like these big epic quests because they've got to fill material. Whereas like if you're a smaller creator and it's just you and you don't have like a bunch of helpers, then you probably you'd be better served going for smaller stories.
Oh yeah.
And like artistically that makes more sense as well, because usually the smaller stories can be more interesting anyway.
Yeah, you get straight. It's like almost like a movie.
Yeah, the world doesn't need more big epic Marvel type stories. It doesn't need that. It needs more smaller stories that are just going interesting directions, or just something that's different that people haven't seen before.
It's definitely convoluted with them now. Mm-hmm. But sounds like you're doing pretty well, if not sticking to the normal regimen, if even during these COVID-19 cases.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, for me, I can't say that it hasn't like affected me because, obviously not being able to, like, the conventions are like the main way in which like I make a living. So not going there, it hurts financially, but at the same time, like my normal life plan just involves me staying inside, working on comics or playing video games a lot anyway. So it's not like I have really changed my lifestyle that much. It hasn't really affected me as much as some people. Okay. And I work at home and I'm self-employed, so I don't have to go anywhere if I don't feel like it.
Oh yeah,
that's nice. That's the way to go.
It is the way to go.
Freedom.
Yeah.
Society's looking at
freedom to not have to exercise freedom.
Society's looking at you as a role model right now.
Exactly. They should be.
But I was kind of curious how it was affected you for consider you can't go to conventions anymore, and it sounds like it is a bit of tighter on the pockets with that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, just a little bit of a story to hear how I got introduced to you. Actually, indirectly at a the UMaCon convention, right?
Oh yeah.
One of our good buddies here. He, in fact, he's one of the guys who commented. It's funny enough.
Actually, he's actually decently big YouTuber, the Elite Ace. We've actually interviewed him before, so some of the guests may be familiar with him.
Yeah. So yeah, this particular time I was hanging out with him and some other YouTubers, the Detroit community, and he was telling me how he got your volume 1. I don't remember exactly the text on these cards, but he mentioned about your flashcard or
yeah, I have a presentation.
Your presentation technique where you were flipping up multiple different cards with leading them on. It just caught his eye. He was like, "Ah, caught your attention."
That's how I get people's attention. That's right.
Yeah, I was like, I've never seen that before. You know, and like as far as like I have to say, I mean, I have to give you props for that. You know, you really know how to draw people in.
Yeah, that's probably the main reason I've been able to like stay successful, just because like I have a way to like market myself that most of the people have trouble with, because the biggest problem with like being independent is finding a way to get you or like to make money off it, basically, because otherwise it's very difficult. You know, you can like sit around and like make your own comics, but like people aren't gonna. It's very difficult to like make a living doing that. So yeah, so I mean, I found a way to like found a niche where I can go to conventions and like market myself, and I'm able to like get people interested in the comic, and it works for me,
As I see. And granted, it didn't make that my friend there, a long-term fan or anything. And he happened to show me the volume, and I got curious about it. I opened it, and one page after another, I'm flipping pages.
Oh yeah, definitely. I remember instantly, this dude was sucked in. I had to check it out after that too. I was like, oh shoot, So I'm like, I realized, honestly, like there were a lot more gems in the dealer's room than I realized. Like a lot of times people just go through the dealer's room and just kind of walk in. It's like, oh shoot, like you can miss a lot of good stuff, in there.
That's true. Yeah, you definitely can find some hidden gems if you look around. Mm-hmm. But it can be a big place. It can be easy to get lost.
Yeah,
a lot.
Very easy. And
that's why you got to do something to like set yourself apart, or else you just get lost. Also, as like a person who is attending that, or like has a table there, it's pretty difficult.
And I think that was like what 7 or 8 years ago when we went that time. So it's only gotten bigger every year since. Yeah, you definitely had to make yourself stand out. Those dealer room tables, they stay packed. It's like you got sound technique going on there.
Yeah, dealers and Artist Alley, like both of them like are they're getting bigger and bigger, they were up until this year.
Or yeah,
but I'm sure they'll be back next year, though. I think that's it's something.
So, what what really inspired you to really decide? This is what I'm gonna do. Like what pushed you, way back when to be like, this is what I'm gonna do, and then what gave you the courage to be like, what, I'm gonna be able to. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do it consistently. I'm gonna build a following, and I'm gonna be able to not only build that following, but to make sure you kept that following.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was just like it was a few things. Just, when I was a kid, it was either like the things I was interested in were like comics, also like movies. I thought about maybe like becoming a director, and then video games. So it was going to be one of those. So. But I like to draw a lot, and I would just draw in like class and stuff and do doodles. And you know, and then after a while, I would like try to make my own comics, my amateur comics, and then I guess it was like around 1999 when I first started like self-publishing my comic online. That was just like a time period where it was kind of like wide open to like come in, like do your comic, or it seemed like it just it was like a great new way to like put your stuff out there and get people to see it. Like it was something that you couldn't do before, you know, like before that, like the dream of like it was just to get your comic published, you know, to like do comics and submit them to like companies. And I would always used to like think about doing that, but that was like extremely difficult. But then once the internet happens, you know, you could just put your comics online, and it was something that it was never available before. So it was pretty amazing. So, you know, I jumped on board that, and you know, I got lucky enough that I was able to get enough of a following that it kind of just snowballed. And then, you know, I started to like find my niche at conventions.
Nice. So like, who would you say, and it doesn't have to be like a manga creator or anything like that, but like, what would you say are your main like influences?
Well, I mean, it would tend to be manga creators, because that's mostly what I read. But I mean, of course, you know, we already mentioned Jojo and Berserk, so that would be two of them. But yeah, I don't know. Like, there's not necessarily like one big one where it was like, you know, I want to draw like this person. But I mean, when I was younger, it was like really into like Dragon Ball comics.
Oh yeah,
and now you know, I mostly read like a lot of like psychological thriller type manga and or gambling manga. That's this kind of stuff I like now.
I don't know why I thought of, even though I have it and I haven't read it, but I thought of like, for some reason, like Bakano or something like that, you know. You know, that seems like something.
Does that have a manga? I haven't I'm not familiar with but I've seen the anime.
It does.
Okay. I haven't read that one. But yeah, that's good too. I mean, the stuff that I'm reading right now is like, I'm really into Usogui. I've always been I've been for a long time big fan of like Kaiji and all of Fukumoto's stuff.
Really Please tell me you like some Junji Ito.
Yeah, although I haven't read as much of his stuff as like I feel like I should. Like I want to read more of it, but yeah. Junji
Have you read Tomie?
Tomie is the one that I want to get into the most, because like the artwork for it, like I always look at the artwork for it, and it's just like she's just such a cool character. You know, the way he draws her.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just and there's also like a billion Tomie movies.
I've never seen the movies. You know, I have like the whole collection.
Apparently, they're varying qualities. So, yeah, I would like to actually get into those. Like, those look really cool.
Yeah, I've got to get into them too. This guy has been telling it up a storm with that.
Dude,
series.
I have the whole collection. Like, you have no excuse.
Oh. Yeah, I know. You know, there's always more. There's so much manga out there to read. There's always something else.
Yes, always something else. And that's what makes it a grand thing to really be a fan of. Is the varying creatives, genres, and different stories out there to tell.
Yeah, and I'm still reading like you know, some of the big shonen stuff that's popular now. Like My Hero Academia is really good. One Punch Man is really good.
Oh yeah, One Punch Man.
One Piece is still really good. And you know, some other stuff like that. I still read a lot of that.
I miss Bleach. I don't know, maybe one of those few people that like miss Bleach. But at least the anime's coming back.
Yeah, I liked Bleach for a while. I read all of Bleach, because even when I kind of stopped liking it so much, I still felt compelled to see what would happen. Well, I mean, it never, like, it was always interesting. Like in that final arc with like all the weird, were they like Stern Ritters? Is that what they were called?
Yeah.
All the weird powers. I mean, he kept coming up with like all these crazy characters with like insane powers, and it was interesting. But it kind of went over a hill, and it was never quite the same after like a certain point. After like somewhere in that big arc, that big Eisen arc, you know. So yeah, I wasn't. I mean, like I didn't I wasn't super happy with where it went, but I still read it anyway.
As did all of us.
So
Yeah.
how do you feel as far as with Flipside? How do you feel as though you, as a creator, are pushing the envelope as far as with comics? Do you feel like you're doing that, or is there something you want to see more come forth with the medium, like in the future?
Yeah, I mean, like I feel like for me, I try to do stuff that is just interesting to me, and it tends to be stuff that's different from what you would usually see. You know, like also like the way that my stories are written is very different from like being from like a more Western perspective, like that takes on like sexuality and stuff like that. So it's you know, in a sense, it has a different voice than like a lot of other Japanese manga, even though it's more traditionally manga looking, or at least I try to make it look traditionally manga as much as I can. I'm not as talented as like, you know, your what's his name, One Punch Man, your Murata. Nobody's as good as Murata though, or the guy who does Berserk. You know.
Oh my goodness,
I'll never be
Murata.
I'll never be at that level, but you know, for a Western dude, I'm all right. You know. But yeah, I don't know. I think that I like, you know, I guess my stories have their sort of unique takes on things that you don't really see in other comics. But as for like what I would like to see other comics do, like I feel like, you know, I mean, personally, my taste, I like to see stuff that's like dark and has like these weird kind of supernatural aspects, like Death Note, stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
And like these like kind of like gambling manga and like thrillers. That's
Did you like Tokyo Ghoul?
Tokyo Ghoul?
Yeah.
I've only seen the anime for that. I haven't actually read the manga.
Oh.
But I mean, at least the first season was really good.
Well, the first season was the only one that followed the manga all the way through, but you know.
Yeah, I heard that was a problem with it.
Yeah. Yeah, season 2 deviated in this route. So
yeah,
there was that whole thing. And not to mention they skipped kind of a major section of the manga.
It did feel like
straight up horror, like manga kind of, you know, in a way. Not as scary as some of the Junji Ito stuff, but it's still got that kind of suspenseful feel to it.
Oh yeah, I definitely love the psychological aspects of it. Yeah, much like I do your series. So,
oh, thanks. I don't know. So, I mean, like, I don't know. There's still like all kinds of like interesting new ideas out there in the manga. Like, as far as like where manga is going, like it's still coming up with enough interesting stuff. Like I like just like something like My Hero Academia, which is like pretty conventional shonen in a lot of ways, but I just like its take on superhero stuff. It takes like a genre, a superhero genre, which I just don't really like that much. Like how Western comics, I've never really liked it. Maybe it's just the way that Western comics use that genre or tell it or commercialize it.
Yeah.
With like their characters that it like are treated more like commodities, and like story arcs are just kind of, everything's kind of disposable, and they have these like, you know, giant universes, and it's more about how everything fits into that. But like, you know, there can be like a story arc that happens, and then it's just forgotten because now we need to do this story arc, and let's just have a new Spider-Man. Let's just have a new Superman. We killed him, but we need Superman because he's a brand. He's not a character. So let's get a new Superman. And then the old one comes back. You know, the very soap opera-y way. Like it's very, very soap opera, like the way and I've never been into that. But like but My Hero Academia like reinterprets just the idea of superheroes into like a more manga type lens, where, you know, you have you still have superheroes doing hero type stuff, but interpreted through like the Japanese lens of like, you know, working for like just the values are different, like the greater good, like and working together as a team and growing, like, and the fact that it's contextualized through high school characters, so it's about like growing up too, which and like that's that's really cool, like, and that appeals to me more, or well, it appeals to me, in a genre that usually doesn't appeal to me.
Okay.
I mean, there's all kinds of like interesting manga. Like I think that there's still like a lot of creativity, stuff like One Punch Man, even though like it's sort of
I like the way it
started out as a satire, and then it's sort of like it a little falls into that trap a little bit of becoming what it's satire.
Right.
But it's still awesome, It still has a good solid core idea that resonates pretty well.
But
so I don't know. What do I want to see more of? Just like more stuff like that, I guess. More stuff that's interesting. I always want to see. I just want to see stuff that's like just does different things. But at the same time, I still like my dark thriller, suspense, gambling type stories. So I'm okay with more of that too.
Fair enough. We're already running up at the last 4 minutes here. I do got a couple more questions though.
Sorry for talking too much.
Hey.
The rest of your questions, I can rapid fire answer them.
This is.
You can get all your questions in.
Hey, this is your spotlight right now. So, for anyone watching you that's new or thinking about getting into being a mangaka or being just a writer or artist in general on the Western side for manga, what would you recommend for them coming into this?
Oh, like as far as like advice for how to like do it?
No, let's say they have interest in being a mangaka.
Yeah, I mean, I always say just like do what I did and just like put your stuff online, because it's a great way to get feedback and also just to get your stuff out there. And it's pretty easy to do that now. There's lots of different places like Webtoons where you can just kind of put your stuff online. And you don't even have to be like a manhwa to publish at Webtoons. You can do more traditional stuff too. Just like do it and put it online and just practice. And get into it as a hobby, not as like don't assume it'll be just get into it as a hobby at first and then just see what happens, and see if you like it.
Okay. And pretty much the staple question of our series here. We're fascinated to hear what everyone's endgame is.
I almost wanted to say it in unison. Like I don't know why. Like I just wanted to say. I was waiting to see
endgame. Well, it doesn't involve an Infinity Gauntlet.
Well, it might as well. What is your end game? What is your Thanos end game? Basically, if you had a gauntlet, and everything goes the way you want it to go. Not literally a gauntlet, but like basically, how do you see things going, or what do you want to eventually? Where do you want your career to go as a manga creator?
It'd be great to like, I don't know, like be contacted by some movie producer and then like $1 million contract. That'd be pretty awesome. But short of that, I don't know, just keep doing it and just have people keep reading it. And my end game would be my realistic end game would be just to finish it and then have some work that I could feel proud of, I guess. That'd be a pretty good end game. But if someone wants to give me $1 million contract, I'm not going to turn it down.
Well, I guess, like if anybody's watching, like, hey, here you go. It's a good comic too. So, I mean, you definitely would get your money's worth.
Thank you. I try.
No, yeah. Again, thank you for being on the spotlight. And
I can definitely say that for sure.
I agree. I was to say this is one of the more humble guests we've had on board. Not to say anybody else wasn't polite, respectful or anything, but definitely in your case, I got strong vibes of that. Ladies, gentlemen, guys and gals, if you're watching from Facebook, switch on over to the YouTube channel,
subscribe.
Double like and subscribe.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Right?
Yeah, and definitely make sure that you go to the Flipside page. You make sure you check that out. There's if this is your first time checking out the comic, you have plenty of material to read too. It's definitely a good read. Will not get bored. Trust me on this. Take it from both of us. Anyway, guys, do you guys have anything to say before we head on out? Actually,
thanks for having me on your show. I appreciate
was one
it.
person. We did get one comment right here from AM. That was a good lesson, y'all. Thank you, AM. Anyway, we'll see you guys later.
Catch y'all later.